Hey everyone, welcome to TechCrunch Live. I'm Matt Burns, and here we help founders build better venture-backed businesses. And the story goes, you have a pitch deck, and you walk up and down the offices at Sand Hill Road, and you hear yes or no. Either your company gets funded or it doesn't. And that's the common thought process. And most of the time, it doesn't work like that. And I think TechCrunch is a big part of that false narrative. We like to highlight these stories that are clean cut. A founder goes into an office and walks away with a clean $30 million term sheet, but that doesn't happen. And we need to talk about it. So today you're going to hear from Sagi Eliyahu, CEO and co-founder Tonkin. He founded the company 7 years ago, and after several years of leading the engineering efforts at Jive Software before startup life, though, he spent several years as a lead engineer at Israel's famed 8200 intelligence core. I don't want to ruin the story, and I think you know where I'm going with this. He pitched Tonkin to Joanne Chen at Foundation Capital, and she said no. But Sagi kept at it, and 6 months later, Foundation led their seed round and joined the company's board. And then the company raised again and added a partner from Lightspeed, and then again added a partner from Excel. So as it sits, Tonkin has a small but impressive board of directors, and we need to talk about that too. So a couple of things. How do you ask questions? You need to log into Hopin, and I'll take a couple questions from the Q&A section there. The link should be visible on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter Spaces now. And you can also tweet at me at MJBurnsy, and I'll watch for that too. But two things before we get to the interview. One, this coming Monday, we have this very special event centered around Boston. We have a 2-hour program scheduled with leading investors and founders of the Boston area to celebrate and to highlight the advantages of that area. And this includes Mark Raybird, who's founder of Boston Dynamic and is now leading a new research firm in the Boston area as well. I hope you can join us. This is a free event, just like every other TechCrunch Live. And let me drop in that link to Hopin. So that's the registration for the Boston event. Lastly, we have an in-person, not free event in Boston this coming April called Early Stage. And I hope you can join us there too. This is an early stage founders summit where we bring together founders to help other founders build their better companies. So find the information on techcrunch.com for that. So I think that's it. It is. Okay. Sagi, Joanna, how are you?
Good to be here.
Good. How are you?
Well, good. Thanks for asking. Well, Sagi, let's start with you. Can you tell me where Tonkin came from and where is it today? And tell me about your fundraising and the business, but keep it concise.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, we started the company 7 years ago. It's been quite a ride. A lot of ups and downs, a lot of different changes in the market. The long story short is that we help companies make and build internal processes that people actually want to follow, and that means leveraging cool technologies and powerful technologies like AI and no code to really wrap around the existing systems and policies and automate the entire flow, whether it's the intake of requests, whether it's a triage it or resolution. The thing is that a lot of those words I just said were not actually a thing 7 years ago. And a lot of the pill bottle was how do you bring digital transformation and a lot of cloud based companies into a point where they think further ahead than just screens of filling tickets, and more into the experience of the process and how to leverage technologies like AI and others.
Where do you see yourself in the competitive landscape right now? Who are your key competitors, and what's the problem you're trying to solve right now?
So the essence of it is when we think about external facing customer processes, everybody knows that customer experience is number one, right? People choose vendors and buying things from companies that has better experience, even if the product is less good. But internal process, for some reason, still left behind, right? Where you think about procurement processes and legal processes and even HR processes, it's really not great of an experience. It feels more like bureaucracy than anything else. And the reality of it is that most people just ignore those processes. And so you can't have efficiency without compliance, and you can't have compliance without adoption. So really what we help companies with is increase that adoption of those internal processes by bringing the experience to the people that request. It's sort of best practices of how you would handle external customers for how you handle internal customers, and that completely transformed the operations of how a company runs.
I really like that line. You can't have compliance without adoption. Can you explain that a little more?
Yeah, I think the funny thing is that most people think about compliance as, you have to do this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things, and we kind of got used to areas of our life that we have to follow rules are areas where we don't have a lot of control over it. When you think about DMV, right, you have to follow those rules, otherwise you're not going to get your driver license. But when you think about corporate life, there's many ways to do things, and no one is, the best salesperson, unfortunately, sometimes is not going to get fired if they're not following the legal process. And so how do you enforce policy if you don't have the authority sometimes, right? And so it's really transforming the thinking from compliance is this policy bureaucracy concept into actually the experience is how you can drive people to do things that you care about. And so we're really trying to bring that concept where operation people really should think as themselves as a product people, where they're actually bring to market an experience and a process, because this really drives, really changed the way company operate and succeed. You can have an amazing product, but if you can't execute the way you want it, then you're not going to get where you want to be. And so helping companies do that is sort of like where we started the entire thing.
Yeah, now that's where you are now, but I want to go back to when you founded this company too, and you pitched Joanne. So why did Foundation invest, and what was your first meeting like? Joanne, let's go to you.
Sure. I met Sagi in 2018, and the product that he was offering was kind of similar to an Airtable. Is that fair, Sagi? There's like an analytics component and then there is a communication kind of automation component to it. And I remember being very intrigued because there's a number of companies and people that were using the solution and spending, a lot of hours in a given day in it, but paying him nothing. And so there was this disconnect where, he was obviously good at creating a product that someone wants to use, but he was not good at extracting dollars from that. So that's one thing I remember. The second is I thought Sagi was a very compelling CEO in many ways, and I actually did some reference calls on him right after. And I remember one of the things that one of his former coworkers told me is, hey, like if there's one person I wouldn't bet against, it's Sagi. So those two things stuck out to me.
Great. Now, as I understand it, you said no the first meeting. Why did you say no?
Because I didn't think the product had a strong product market fit for the time. And so, to raise capital to grow that product, I didn't think was the right direction.
Right. Now, how often do you see that? Let's say I'm coming to you and I'm pitching my company. How often do you say yes?
Look, we say no 99% of the time. 1% of it is a yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think out of the 99%, there are many situations where we're wrong, that founders prove us wrong. That happens all the time. So we're very, very cognizant of that. I think the no is a subjective no and is a point in time no.
Right. So when he came back to you, or what did he do to follow up? Let's start there.
I believe we reconnected several months later. I think Sagi had run a fundraising process and he wasn't really getting kind of the traction that he had hoped. One of the areas that we've been studying is kind of different automation solutions for business processes. And I thought that one of the components that was really interesting was like a data layer, in addition to what he had already. And so when we reconnected, I said, hey, like there's these companies are getting traction. This is like the customers are selling to. Have you thought about maybe going down that direction?
Mm-hmm.
So we started having conversations. I think maybe several months later, Sagi came back with 2 pilot customers. And I was impressed with a slightly different product that was more oriented around this direction. And we shook hands and kind of thought, hey, let's partner together to get this company to the next level.
That's great. Now, Sagi, what did you change in your pitch or your product? And what do you say to founders that are struggling to convey the needs for capital?
Yeah, I think the first thing is that I do think it's important. It sounds cliche, but I do think it's important to kind of remember like the essence of what you start from. Because in reality, that first product or first pitch, right, was very different than the second one, which is also very, very different than the one, we're using now. And by the way, different than the one we used a year ago, right? And so that thing continually evolves as you learn the market, as you understand your customers and you learn from them. But it's built on top of the same things, right? When I started the company, we really were trying to solve a very basic problem of how we feel technology is being leveraged for work, right? We felt like we only use it to store and handle data. We didn't feel like it actually pertained to the people that are part of the process. And so as we went along the journey, we attacked it from different directions, right? And so the first product, as Joanne mentioned, was really focused on small teams, right? That's kind of where it felt a little bit like Airtable from that perspective. But and we got great usage, but not a lot of money out of it. And the change we made was understanding some of the other trends in the market that actually went higher up market. This was a lot of companies are starting higher and then go down, or starting down have hard time go high market. The pivot we did is actually completely changing the market we're going after, and then turned up to be productive for us. But I think many times along the way, we were in a position where we almost gave up on the initial idea, original idea. And the joke is, in one iteration, we almost went to start an AR, convert Tonkin to an AR company, which I'm very happy we didn't. But it's really sort of like we, stay true to that part, because on the hard times, this is really where you're gonna find answers, at least from my experience thus far. And I think the other part of your question is, what do you say to founders? I heard this a while ago, which I really liked, is, you can change your mind about the concept of a no very easily. If I tell you that, within 20 no's or 100 no's, you're gonna be a billionaire. The first thing that's going to happen after that is that you'll say, okay, great. I need to get the no's, right? Because you start count down the no's. So give me a no, where do I get my next no? And that's kind of the next thing will happen. You're going to look for your second no. So it's really kind of change your mind, because it's not how you see in, the HBO show or in some articles. I've probably got hundreds of no's along the years, but it was never about what did it say about me or what did it say about the company. It's more of like, what am I missing? What am I not communicating, or what am I missing, right? And this was specifically that fork in the road was we were missing something about the market that Joanne and a couple others helped highlight. And then we were able to kind of zoom out from it and see that we actually can definitely help that segment of the market better. So it was very easy for us to make the change and get customers on it, because we were already there. We just didn't see it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that does make sense. And then you must have got better at pitching because you raised several other rounds and you have an amazing board right now. I was hoping you could talk to what you've learned about raising and then converting some of these investors into board members.
Yeah, so I think raising money is not what you think it is. At least when I came into this career in building a company, you kind of feel like it's a goal. Maybe that's also some of the sort of like how we talk about it in the media and stuff, but we celebrate those every time someone raises money. And the second I stopped thinking about it as what I need to do, as a goal, as kind of where I need to go to, and more of the course of the business, like what am I going to do with this money, and where do I want to go with it? And again, it sounds cliche, but from an entrepreneur perspective, it's really like not obvious when you start, because it's like, oh, the company does not exist if it doesn't raise money, which is true, but you're not going to raise money unless the company has a reason to exist, if that makes sense. So it's a mind shift, that it's literally like the slide. But once it changed, it was much easier to present myself, to present the idea, to present the company in different stages, and it's true for every stage. The words are very different. The things you highlight are very different in a seed round versus in a B round, but the essence of it is still the same, because you're always trying to build the bridge between where things are at right now. So why does the company should exist right now, but also why should it exist will it exist in 2, 5 years, 10 years, and what that might look like.
Joanne, I'm sure you have some thoughts here.
Sure. So I think fundraising, a couple of things to consider. One is that there is a prepared mind aspect from the investor side. It's much, much easier to raise from investors if the investor has already looked at this market and done homework on it and already believes that a company like deserves to exist, right? And I think when Sagi raised his seed round, the appetite and the understanding for this market from most investors was low. When he raised his Series A, it was pretty high. When he raised the Series B, it was it was high in a very, very hot market, right? So there's a lot of macro which folks need to consider. So for example, today, if you're a VR company raising capital, it's gonna be very hard because there's very, very few investors who think of that as a market they want to fund.
Sure.
But if you're an enterprise SaaS company, leveraging GPT-3, the world's your oyster today. So that's like one thing to consider. I think the second thing to consider is the level of abstraction that founders tell the story to investors is very different than the level of abstraction they tell the story to customers. And that's one thing that most founders do not realize. Investors care about you, the founder, and the founding team as a seed investor. I'm speaking for myself, since we do mostly seed stage investing. We care about the market and the market opportunity, including why this deserves to exist, and what have you done to, kind of de-risk. It's like the upside and the risk, and what you've done to de-risk. That's the story. All the other details are not that relevant, including, why is this feature of my product different from the feature of my competitor's product? Fantastic, right? Like, investors don't need to hear that. And the goal for the first meeting is to get a second meeting where you're kind of like, there's this like song and dance of, it's kind of like dating in some ways, I guess.
I've heard that before, yes.
So the aspect of fundraising and the goals of fundraising and what is the orientation around communication is just fundamentally different.
We need to talk about board of directors, though, too. And Joanne, you're on Tonkin's board of directors. What's your role there, and how do you see yourself as a guide or a partnership?
I think the philosophy of having a board is to provide a a level of check and balances to a company, to bring past experiences and observation to this present situation, and to be the connector between the company and other, people that can be helpful, whether it's customers, advisors, other, possible investors, et cetera. So that's our goal. And I think the different stages are also different, right? So as a seed stage investor, joining the board at the time meant a lot more tactical day-to-day help. Once you get to your pre-IPO round, that investor is bringing more experience and kind of governance around how do you prepare a company to be an IPO ready company. So I think the skill sets are different. But all in all, the goals are similar, which is to make sure that there is a level of governance outside of the CEO.
Now, I got to ask this to both of you, but we'll start with you, Joanne. How do you handle disagreements?
Yeah, I think that disagreements will always happen, right? People have different opinions, different motivations, different places they are, and also different data sets that they're working from. The first, and very importantly, is having a basis for trust, and this is trust between the investors and the CEO, the trust between the investors and each other, and I do think that fundamental needs to be built during kind of the fundraising process and also beyond. I find that boards that are well functioning have a level of trust that that can weather disagreements and still come out in a very, very productive place. Whereas those that don't have that, have a much harder time.
Yeah. Now, Sagi, what have you learned over time? How do you handle disagreements with your board members?
Yeah, I think the interesting dynamics. So I completely agree with Joanne, and I think that relationship equivalent is not only on the dating period, is also it stays for a long time. I think it's something also a lot of people talk about, but when you choose an investor choose you basically get into a relationship of usually at least 10 years, right? So it's not an obvious thing that people necessarily talk about. Even these days, people join companies, they don't see themselves necessarily stay for 10 years. So there's not a lot of even equivalent in the corporate world as it used to be. So I think that's an important first part. I think the second part is the team aspect of a board. I think it's very common in management in general for people to not think about their team as the team that reports to them versus their peers, and therefore they might not spend as much time managing that relationship. And I think what I've learned over the years again and again is the importance of maintaining that relationship and think about it as a team that we have a shared goal. And at the end of the day, being able to both create enough visibility to get the check and balances in place, and enough context to have the conversation, but also not get too much into the details. So it's a very fine balance between getting actual benefits. The board gets benefit from the CEO and the CEO gets benefit from the board. So that relationship is something that you continue to nurture. And I think when it works well, and I think we got to a point where a lot of times that was transformational for us to have that relationship. It really can take the company to a different level, especially as we've seen in the last 2 years. The macroeconomics can really throw you into a loop, and so that type of relationship is important.
Yeah, no, Joanne, I want to go back to Foundation Capital. What's a good founder fit for you all over there?
Yeah, I think as we invest in seed stage enterprise and fintech, and I'm personally focused on the enterprise side. We typically back founders who are technical or somewhat technical who can sell. That's the profile. We also look for persistence. We look for the ability to learn, because every single stage of the company is different. And a CEO is constantly having to reinvent him or herself for the job. In a good situation, the company is growing actually faster. And so the job requirement actually changes more rapidly than people really realize as the leader of the company. So we look for someone who can learn and grow in addition to persistence. And
imagine it's just me and you, and Sagi's not here, but tell me what Sagi's good at, and what isn't he good at?
So I think Sagi is a creative, product and oriented technical founder who can sell. So he was, very much in the sweet spot of what we typically like and back. I was very impressed with his persistence. I do think that in every single company journey and story, it just requires so much belief, but also the ability to change to make it happen. There's not a single straightforward story. Where investors in Netflix a long time ago, and Netflix got close to getting bankrupt multiple times, which is the story that most people don't hear about. And so it does require a level of tenacity, as well as the ability to pivot. And I think Sagi was, really strong at both of those things.
Yeah. No, Sagi, do you agree? How do you see yourself?
Humbly agree.
It's a weird question, right? No one ever asks you that. No one ever asks you for peer feedback immediately on a live podcast. So I thought I should throw that out there and do that for you.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you that one of our core values in the company, driven from that experience, is we call "There's Always a Way," which is basically trying to push that envelope into even if when it looks like it's not working and you can't figure it out, there's always a way. You just need to find it. And so we're really trying to live that through our company culture as well.
Well, I got to ask you to kind of start rounding this up, though. But where do you see as a blind spot in your leadership?
I think Joanne mentioned the how fast the job changes, and you feel it. You feel it as a CEO. You feel it day in, day out. There's that imposter syndrome concept that I'm sure you know of. It's every time you get a hang of it, the job changed, and sometimes it's every year, sometimes it's every 3 months, and so it's really that I think is, I think if I feel like I got it covered, then I'm probably something's wrong. It's always it means that things are moving. So that is an everlasting challenge.
Yeah, so no, I feel that personally. And I'll take this moment real quick. We're changing the way TechCrunch Live works, and I'm not going to host anymore. And that just all changed the last couple of weeks. So I feel that really deep. That once you start to get the hang of things will often change. So I think we're going to start to round this up here, but I want to end with one more thought on fundraising. Now, when you went out to all these investors and you got told no, what was the thing that you're walking away from this knowing that you're good at?
I think if you question yourself on your fundamentals, like I didn't have that. I've never thought to myself, oh, maybe there's nothing here. Maybe I can't do this. Maybe, my first reaction was always like, they're wrong. And then the second reaction is, okay, but I'm also wrong at something. So let's try to figure out like why, and trying to critical think about it. And so like go to the fundamentals. So I think you have to come from a confidence place first, because otherwise you won't be able to ask the confidence question, but then you have to ask the question of what are you missing? And a lot of times it might be not the right fit. Like Joanne said, you have to have someone that actually already, don't need to teach them on the market, right? So they're already in the market. Sometimes maybe you're in the wrong market, right? And how do you leverage that? And sometimes maybe you don't have the right team, and you need to sort of like add that too. So I think to me it was critically thinking about the feedback and and base it on the fundamentals of, I believe that I can do this.
Oh, that's great. Now we have one more segment called Pitch Practice, where we bring companies on live and they pitch you guys. Before we get to that, there's a couple questions from the audience. They're just random questions. So I'm going to ask this to both of you. This is straight from the questions. Give it to me straight. Do I have to spend tons of money on a pitch deck? And how pretty does it have to be? Joanne, let's start with you. If you can give me a brief answer on that.
So I don't think you need to spend a ton of money. But I do think that having a prettier pitch deck, let's use that term, that's well designed is important. And the reason why is because investors extrapolate how well structured a pitch deck is to how well structured and usable your product is. If you come to me with a pitch deck that doesn't look professional, that has, all sorts of mistakes or is not well designed, then my first reaction is, hey, you're probably not a very good user interface person. And what does that mean for your product, especially if you're selling a self-service product? I mean, that's probably a problem, or even an enterprise product is probably a problem.
Sagi, did you spend money on any of your pitch decks? All honestly, I didn't have pitch decks. So I would say, from my experience, spend that money or time on the story and the narrative. I completely agree with the UI piece that Joanne mentioned, but I didn't have a pitch deck, so it's not a must-have.
Well, that's a good tip there. And then lastly, what would you advise for bootstrap companies? Is an advisory board beneficial, or perhaps when should a company have build a board? Joanne, let's start with you.
But I for sure think it's beneficial. It's good to get feedback, but only probably from a few sources, not a lot, because then feedback is confused. So I would pick the advisory board very carefully and think about where that person is coming from in terms of delivering that feedback.
That's good advice. Sagi?
Yeah, I would think about it as risk mitigation in a way. If you're by yourself, you can win everything, but you can also lose everything, and you don't have any support system. So it's more of like an ecosystem that you build around yourself. And you should think about it in levels. There should be people that are like one-off advice, and there should be people that you a text message away. And so, really sort of like circling the company with more people that want it badly to succeed. They really, really want to make sure that this thing works.
Well, that's good advice too, right? All right. Well, fantastic. That concludes the audience questions. So we're going to switch right into pitch practice. I host TechCrunch Startup Battlefield, and it's just a thrill to watch these companies pitch, but you need to pitch a lot and you need to practice a lot. So that's the whole thought process here. So we have 3 companies. 2 of them were picked during this chat, the last 30 minutes. So they haven't had any time to prepare. But the first one we're going to bring on is by Trey Brown. Trey Brown his company's Ride Fresh, and I'll put the URL in the hopping chat. Trey, are you there?
I am just trying to start the video real quick, guys. Sorry, hope you guys can see me.
We can see you, sir. You have 2 minutes to present your company, and that starts now.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Trey Brown, and I'm co-founder of a company called Ride Fresh. Now, there's one air freshener that we all know that's hanging up in your dad's car, and it's Little Tree. This is where I laser focus your brain on this opportunity. The mobile air freshener market is a $3 billion TAM. It's the ultimate impulse buy. Now, in that $3 billion sea of opportunity, imagine a world where there's a Coca-Cola, that would be Little Tree, and no Pepsi. Ride Fresh is a style-based mobile air freshener brand founded in 2018. We stand out through our original designs, which feature iconic song titles about driving, QR codes on each of our units that take customers to a curated playlist about driving, and our licensed content partners such as Paramount, think of SpongeBob, and the NBA. We began as an industry-first DTC, gaining over 43,000 total subs and generating over $1.4 million in revenue before pivoting to retail in the middle of 2022. And in that time, we secured over $450,000 in guaranteed POs from our partners Target and AutoZone. And we're currently in talks with companies such as Dollar General, Walmart, and other big box retailers and car washes to carry our product. Additionally, we aired on ABC Shark Tank last November, and this has really poured fuel onto our retail scaling efforts. We conservatively expect to do a $5 million revenue in 2023 and $28 million by 2028. I only have one question for you guys, and that is, does this opportunity spark your interest? Thank you.
Great. That was very good. Very, very good, sir. I just bought an Axe air freshener last week for my truck. Is your product better than the Axe stuff?
100%. 100%.
I like it. All right, Joanne, let's start with you. We're looking for feedback on the pitch itself.
Sure. Well, thank you for that, Trey. I thought the pitch was great. So you're obviously very well prepared, and it was very succinct and evoked, emotions and imagery and whatnot. I will caveat that, I don't invest in consumer companies, especially, kind of consumer brands. So my feedback is going to be, take it with a grain of salt. I guess a couple things. One is there's a question of like, how big can a venture scale business be in this market? $3 billion of spend, that's revenues, so which is great, but what margins, right? So investors want to understand, is that revenues worth 4x market cap? Is that revenues worth 15x market cap or less, right? So and that's very dependent on the margin profile and how businesses are built. So I may add something there. The second part is, it's easy to kind of point to a big company in the space. I like the Pepsi analogy, but it's not in the space. Like, is there a company that is massive that's like selling this? And if so, how much are they worth? Because then an investor can say, okay, I can extrapolate, from that to a large company that you're going to displace. Or the case could be that perhaps the market is not saturated, that a lot of people are not buying fresheners for whatever reason. Maybe you can open up the market. And that's like another aspect that I may go into. The only other comment I will say is, like, you talk about the retail strategy quite a bit. What I would like to understand is that the main go-to-market, is there like an influencer strategy, or are there other marketing strategies? So help me understand what is like the number one focus. So, but all in all, very, very, very good pitch.
Thank you. I really appreciate that, Joanne. And again, I'm writing all this down, so just know that I'm paying attention to what you're saying. I'm just writing it down as well. So, got it.
All right, Sagi, over to you. Any feedback?
Yeah, I was about to say similar, Trey. Thanks for this. And every time I was thinking to myself, is he going to talk about this thing? And then literally your next sentence was touching on this thing. So that was good. And I also like the SpongeBob and Pepsi, visualization. I think the one question to me was immediately when you talked about the dad, everyone's dad's car has this tree thing. I was trying to remember when is the last time I bought an hair freshener, and it was like years ago. But then back then I used to do it a lot every time I washed my car.
Right.
And, and to me, I'm like, that was kind of like the consumer trends. I'm also not, much familiar with, but I missed a little bit of like what's going on right now in that consumer side of things. And this is where Joanne talked about influencers. That kind of when my hand went to is how does people buy? What point do they buy air fresheners? It's when they wash their cars because they see someone on TikTok talks about it. Like, do they order it on Amazon, or do they do it when they change tires? This is kind of like, I'm not educated about it, but that was kind of missed to me. So to kind of visualize what is the go-to-market looking like.
Gotcha.
That's really interesting feedback, Sagi. Thank you so much for that. And I got to, has there been a rise in demand of air fresheners with the rise of legal cannabis?
That would be that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that one, but I know, I can come back to you on that, right? But that's something that we don't have right now, but I would assume so, to be honest.
Little green tree, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that, Trey. And please keep in touch.
Thank you.
Connect with me. I'd like to take a look at this a little more.
Yeah, thanks a lot,
and then,
Matthew.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, our internal TechCrunch chat is blowing up with different recommendations on car air fresheners. So you got a hot topic here.
Oh man, I'll take all the info I can get. Really.
All right, Trey. Keep in touch, sir. Thank you so much.
Yep, definitely.
Okay, I lost my sheet here. So, okay, we got two more companies. Next one is Paul. Paul is coming to us with Merlin TPS Corp. Paul, are you there?
I sure am.
All right, Paul, sir, you have 2 minutes starting now, and I just dropped your URL and hop in. Go ahead.
I want to thank Trey for teaching me how to make it a little more personal. So imagine you're in downtown San Francisco on Market Street. You're on southbound side waiting for your on-demand ride. And next thing you know, it pulls up on the northbound side and you miss your ride. You got to wait for the next one that comes. What happened? Well, there's this thing called GPS, and it comes from a series of 30-some satellites rotating around the Earth, beaming down in a vertical direction, location, timing, and navigation information. And so when it gets into an urban canyon like that, it starts bouncing off the buildings. And so, your on-demand ride thinks you're on one side of the road. Your smartphone is placing you on the other side of the road, and you don't connect. So that's just one small example to try and bring it home of the problem we're solving, is that GPS is used everywhere, from ride sharing to power grids, financial markets, 5G and internet are all require GPS to provide timing, positioning, and navigation information. Well, what happens if that GPS being beamed from satellites 20,000 miles up is no longer available? The short answer is chaos. Billions of dollars can be lost when power grids are crippled, when financial networks go down, when your data centers start having timing issues, not to mention military applications as well. In fact, there's a GPS battle going on right now in Ukraine and Russia where it's being affected. So what we're trying to do is not replace GPS, but we need resiliency in the position, navigation, and timing market. And we bring the resiliency terrestrially. What does that mean? Well, we've uncovered some algorithms and methodologies to be able to take the 17,000 radio stations across the country and convert those into little mini satellites, if you will.
All right, Paul, I'm going to stop you there.
Sure.
Okay. Well, let's get some feedback for you, sir. Joanne, can we start with you?
Sure. Thanks, Paul, for the pitch. I think you did a really good job painting the impact of having no GPS, right? And how big that market is. My comment, obviously we were short on time, so that's in a real pitch, you will have way more time to talk about this than the 2 minutes. Sure. But I think, in a two-minute window, the problem statement can probably be addressed by 2 to 3 sentences. And I would have probably spent the rest of the time talking about your solution, because I still don't understand what your solution is, including, who are you selling to? How much money are you getting for that? Why is it that you, Paul, are uniquely suited to work on this problem, right? And how big of a market it is for your solution. So we were missing all those aspects, and I think this is just a 2-minute crunch kind of constraint.
Absolutely, we got to make money somehow, right? And then Sagi, over to you. And I have some stuff at the end too.
Yeah, it's probably similar. It was interesting. The two sides of the world was personal, but I was waiting for the solution, and also who's gonna pay for it. Who are we trying to help? The Lyft Uber driver company, or the cell phone company, the consumer ones. So maybe jumping to that almost immediately, even before you describe the solution. It's who's gonna care about the fact that I am on the other side of the road waving for, for the person to see me, kind of thing.
Yeah, from my perspective, it was one of those things where most of us understand GPS and we understand the pains with it. So jump into the solution and then the specific market that we're looking to address, because it can't be everyone. It's got to be it's got to be a much smaller addressable market. And something like that would have conveyed the company's goals in a more succinct manner. I guess that would be my feedback.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. Now we still have 1 minute and 45 seconds left on your segment, and that's yours. So why don't you tell us who the market is and what the solution is?
There's a variety of different markets. What we focused on is smarter city and agriculture and drone markets. And then with those, the way we work is we set up a reference unit that covers an entire metropolitan area. And we take those signals of opportunities, those AM, FM stations, and then each of the endpoints can receive that. It's sort of like call home, where am I? And we tell them exactly where they are. And we've also found a very good market, expanding market for the future in the decentralized wireless world, where miners spoof GPS with a whole rack of them and, in one country, and they all tell the system that they're mining in downtown New York. So they can abuse the platform that way. So I have a question for Joanne and Sagi. Did you hear enough to want to learn more?
Did I hear enough to want to learn more? I think so. I mean, I think the part that's probably missing is your background in this. Like, why are you working on this?
Well, I have 20 seconds, so I'll tell you. I came across a professor and a group of embedded software guys who had come up with this solution. So we patented it. And the U.S. government then put in place laws and regulations that put firm dates that an alternative has to be put in place. I've lived in San Francisco and the Bay Area for 19 years, so I'm an opportunist when it comes to early stage startups and finding the right product market fit. And we have that, and we're the right team in place to do that from a technology and an execution perspective. If you want to learn more, it's paul@merlintps.com.
Great. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you so much, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
All right. Best of luck and keep in touch, sir.
Thank you.
All right. We have one more. Rick Wise is coming to us from Vioare, Vioare.com, VIOCARE.com. Rick, are you there? Should be. Turn on your camera and your mic for me.
There we go. Hello.
Hello. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. Nice to talk to you. Okay, sir, you have 2 minutes to present your company, and you're the last one for the day.
All right, great. Nice to meet all of you. I am Rick Weiss, the president, founder, and my favorite title, Chief Wellness Engineer at Vioare. We're in Princeton, New Jersey. Vioare helps healthcare providers help their patients eat better to prevent disease through the use of personalized nutrition assessment and behavior technology. The technology is a cloud-based tool called VioScreen. It's very unique in that it uses a questionnaire that includes 1,500 pictures of food portion sizes. It was validated in a study at Ohio State University. It's very important to Vioare's brand is that we're scientifically validated and used by high-end professionals. The idea is that we want to focus on healthcare providers who have or don't have dietitians to support them in enabling patients to change their lifestyle based on personalized dietary recommendations. It serves as kind of like a digital dietitian, allowing for a clinician to incorporate dietary counseling in their chronic care management treatment plan. So we're focused on diseases that have a relationship with lifestyle, like diabetes, cardiovascular disease, cancer, GI, kidney failure, and others. We have a who's who of customer lists: MD Anderson, Mayo Clinic, Fox Chase, Ohio State University, major medical centers, but in addition, other organizations like the Dr. Dean Ornish Lifestyle Medical Practice. We have funded most of our R&D through NIH grants, 27 grants, totally $27 million so far. And a critical part of our expansion has been a study that was done recently by Geisinger that demonstrated that our intervention feedback system used on 200 hypertension patients was able to change their blood pressure by 7 points, weight loss up to 11 pounds, all done in 3 months. So a lot of significant capabilities in a very short time. Thank you.
And thank you, Rick. I appreciate that. And I just need portion control at like 11 p.m. at night. Every time else, I'm good, but less at night. Sagi, let's start with you. Any feedback?
I love the emphasis of this is scientifically backed or proven, and the last few pieces of actual impact information. For what I gathered from the entire 2 minutes is that it's personalized, but I was waiting to hear how is it personalized. So that's sort of like one sentence was, I was waiting for it and waiting for it and waiting for it. So maybe you kept me waiting, but that would be the feedback.
If I have 30 seconds left at this, I'll tell you what that is.
That'd be great. Go ahead.
Oh, so the unique part of it is that our questionnaire, which drives people through a set of food decisions, we ask about what foods they consume, how often and how much. At the end, then we generate this detailed analysis, and we'll look at things like we generate a score called the Healthy Eating Index score. So it's like a number from 0 to 100, and we look at gaps in their diet patterns. For instance, one gap might be a low fruit score. So if you have a score of 2 out of 5 on fruit, but you eat 1 apple a week, we'll compare you against a population, kind of a bit of AI here, and determine that a nudge like changing that behavior from 1 apple a week to 1 apple 3 to 4 times a week will improve your fruit score and improve your overall health. We generate about 20 nudges for the average American, and the idea is that they pick 3 or 4 of them, and that's it. So they're very simple, easy to implement, done over a 3-month period, and then we can do more 3-month periods to keep on nudging them forward.
That's great. Joanne?
Super interesting. The one piece that was probably missing for me is like where the money is coming from and why. So who's incentivized in this ecosystem to pay? How does it work? Is it, coming from consumers directly? Is it coming from the insurance companies? Is it coming from, the medical practitioners? And go ahead.
I'm sorry, and it is an issue. I mean, when I started the company, there was great evidence, proven evidence about diet-disease relationship, and so I thought this would be eventually a good thing to work on. However, diet reimbursement from payers is very lacking. On the other hand, what we decided to do a number of years ago was make our providers are the ones that pay us. So Mayo Clinic, MD Anderson, they're paying, but we provide them the service at a cost that not that they don't care, but it's minimal compared to it's kind of cost of business if you want to provide better care. So it's generally a site license kind of thing that based on locations instead of providers, a standard kind of a digital healthcare kind of component.
Got it. Then I think the next question would be how big is this market, right? In terms of if the cost is relatively low, do you have enough of a buyer population to be able to build a massive business and venture scale that'll be $1 billion in revenues or more?
Well, and the market's huge because we're talking about basically providers, physician practices, which there's hundreds of thousands of practices in the disease states that we're focusing on. So right now our main focus currently is on cancer centers, and there's 1,500 of them. And so the idea would be as we move into that space more, we'll move into cardiology, GI, and kidney failure. So each has tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of practices, and each one would pay a yearly subscription license fee.
I'm going to jump in here. Joanne, I have a tactical question. You mentioned earlier, because every investor is looking at AI startups. Should Rick lean into his AI part of his business right now when raising?
I think the reason why investors lean into the whole AI thing is because there is an opportunity to build a product they weren't able to build before, or there's like a very different cost associated with using AI technologies. So I think just saying you're an AI startup is insufficient. You kind of have to paint the picture of why this fundamentally changes the cost of doing business or your product.
Good advice. Good advice. Last year, this time, every company was a crypto company. Now every company is an AI company. Okay. Well, thank you so much. That concludes today's TechCrunch Live with a little AI joke at the end. And I really appreciate to all the guests, Joanna, Sagi, and Rick, and all the rest of the Pitch Practice people. Please join us on Monday when we're going to take a special trip to Boston. And then we'll be back on the regular scheduled time on Wednesday as well at noon Pacific, 3 Eastern. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you then.